The storm had roared over Miami like a living beast, lashing the coast with sheets of rain and tearing palm trees from the earth like paper dolls. As dawn broke over the battered shoreline, the city began to stir again, unsure of what it might find after such a violent night. On the sands of South Point Beach, the air still tasted of salt and ozone. The usual early joggers hadn't yet returned, but one person was already combing the shore for debris, not out of curiosity, but duty. Olivia Hart, a marine biologist with the Florida Coastal Rescue Unit, trudged barefoot across the wet sand, a clipboard in hand and a waterproof radio clipped to her belt. She nearly missed it at first. It looked like another hunk of driftwood, slick and dark. But as Olivia got closer, the outline shifted. The movement was subtle, a twitch of a fin, unmistakably alive. Her breath caught. No. She dropped the clipboard and ran. Lying on its side in the sand, half covered in seaweed, was a young dolphin. Its sleek gray skin bore a network of shallow scratches. One eye blinked slowly, glazed but aware. It didn't move much. It didn't have the strength. Olivia dropped to her knees beside it. "Hey, buddy. You still with me?" The dolphin wheezed through its blowhole, a strained and desperate sound. She checked its vitals the way she'd been trained. Skin hydration, breathing, eye response. It had probably been stranded sometime during the night, tossed ashore by the surge and too weak to swim back. Time was short. She grabbed her radio. "This is Hart at South Point. I've got a live dolphin stranded on the beach. Juvenile, underweight, likely dehydrated and exhausted. Request immediate marine response and mobile tank support." The reply crackled back. "Copy that, Hart. Units en route." 10 minutes later, the rumble of wheels on sand signaled the arrival of the rescue truck. It came with a small team. Thomas Reed, a gruff but kind-hearted veterinarian. Jasmine Flores, an intern with more passion than experience, and 2 lifeguards temporarily assigned to help with post-storm wildlife rescue. As the team assembled the portable stretcher, Olivia remained by the dolphin's side, whispering to it, keeping it calm. "We're going to get you back in the water. Just hold on." They worked quickly. Jasmine helped Olivia slide damp towels under the dolphin while Thomas checked its heart rate. The creature didn't struggle, didn't even vocalize. A bad sign. "He's on the edge," Thomas said grimly. "Severe dehydration, possibly some lung sand ingestion. We need to get him stabilized or he won't make it." With coordinated effort, they lifted the dolphin into the padded stretcher and gently placed it inside the seawater-filled mobile tank. A slight tremble rippled through its body, then stilled. Olivia climbed into the back of the truck, staying with him during the short drive to the Miami Marine Rescue Center. She kept one hand on the dolphin's smooth side, her palm pressed over his steady but weak breathing. "We'll call you Storm," she said softly, "because you made it through one." The center buzzed with activity. The facility had handled hurricanes before, but each storm brought new surprises and tragedies. They wheeled the tank into the marine triage room, where warm, filtered seawater flowed continuously to simulate a calm ocean current. Storm was carefully lowered into the larger recovery pool. For a moment, it seemed like he wouldn't move. Then, with slow, effortful turns, he adjusted himself to a vertical floating position. Weak, but still alive. Olivia watched him for a long time. Others came and went, but she didn't leave. Later that evening, Thomas approached with a quiet nod. "We stabilized him. Vitals are holding. No broken bones, no deep lacerations. He's lucky." "He's alone," Olivia murmured, her eyes never leaving the tank. "If he got separated during the storm, his pod may be far out by now." Thomas sighed. "Pods move fast. Even if we nurse him back to health, finding them again might not be possible." But Olivia didn't respond. In her mind, she was already forming a plan, one that would take all her expertise and a fair amount of hope. She wasn't going to let Storm become just another tragic rescue, not if she could help it. Storm's recovery was slow, far slower than Olivia had hoped. On the second day, he remained nearly motionless in the quarantine tank, his breath shallow, his movements weak. The team monitored his vitals around the clock, rotating in shifts, but Olivia stayed longer than any of them. There was something about the dolphin's eyes that held her. Not just desperation, but something deeper, something broken. "He's not eating," Jasmine reported on the morning of the 3rd day. "We've tried live fish, pre-cut squid, even electrolyte solutions. He turns away every time." Olivia stood at the edge of the pool, arms folded. "It's not just physical. He's traumatized, isolated. Dolphins are incredibly social. If his pod is gone, that might be why he's not responding. Thomas leaned on the railing beside her. Even if he bounces back physically, his mental state could delay or even prevent rehabilitation. We may have to consider permanent captivity if he can't reintegrate. No, Olivia said immediately, too sharply. He's not done yet, I can feel it. Thomas raised an eyebrow. You always were the stubborn one. Call it persistent, she said, eyes fixed on Storm's thin, still body gliding slowly through the water. That night, she stayed late again. The center was quiet, the usual bustle hushed under low lights and humming filters. Olivia sat cross-legged by the tank, her tablet open beside her, though she wasn't reading. Her gaze remained on the dolphin. You know, she said aloud, I used to come here as a kid. I was 12 when I saw my first stranded dolphin. Smaller than you. It didn't make it. She paused. I promised myself then that I'd learn enough to make a difference next time. Storm didn't respond, of course, but something shifted in his posture. A slow half-turn, a flick of the tail. His eye met hers. It wasn't much, but it was something. The following morning brought a subtle change. Jasmine was first to notice it. He's watching me. Olivia hurried over. Sure enough, Storm hovered near the surface now, his head angled toward Jasmine, tracking her movements with cautious interest. Encouraged, they brought a small fish closer. Storm didn't eat it, but he didn't retreat either. Later that afternoon, Olivia tried hand-feeding a half-cut herring. Storm floated near, watching. Then, without fanfare, he took it. It wasn't a victory dance moment. It was quiet, hesitant. But Olivia's smile lit up the room. That's it, Storm, she whispered. That's the start. By the end of the 5th day, Storm had begun moving more, turning slowly in the current, nudging floating toys, even vocalizing softly when Olivia entered the room. His whistles were faint but distinct, a melody of confusion and loneliness. Olivia sat in the observation room that evening with Thomas, watching the monitors. We've stabilized his vitals, and he's eating now, but he's still weak, and he's not using echolocation. Thomas glanced at the screen. Could be neurological, or psychological. You think it's grief? Maybe. Or he's just waiting for a reason to call out. Thomas rubbed his beard thoughtfully. You're still planning to try and reunite him with the pod, aren't you? She nodded. You know the odds are. I know, she interrupted. But if we don't at least try, we've already given up on him. Thomas didn't argue. The next morning brought unexpected news. One of the offshore tracking buoys had picked up a small pod of bottlenose dolphins moving northward, about 12 miles from where Storm had washed ashore. Jasmine ran in with the update, breathless. They're showing similar whistle signatures to the recordings we got from Storm. Olivia's heart jumped. Get me the coordinates. Over the next 2 days, they recorded Storm's whistles and played them back alongside the offshore pod's vocalizations. There were undeniable similarities, not exact matches, but enough overlap to suggest familial ties. Olivia's hope bloomed like fire in her chest, but there was still one problem. He's not strong enough yet to swim that distance, Thomas warned. And even if we boat him out, there's no guarantee the pod will accept him back. Rejection happens. Olivia frowned, staring at Storm's recovering form. Then we find a way to ease the transition. A slow reintroduction. Controlled observation. They set the plan in motion. A rehabilitation lagoon 2 miles up the coast, recently vacated by a successfully released manatee, was chosen as the midpoint. It had full saltwater circulation, coral simulations, and partial access to open water. A perfect testing ground. Transporting Storm was delicate. They waited for dawn on the 8th day, loading him into a specialized marine transfer tank. The drive was slow and smooth. Olivia stayed in the back again, eyes on him the whole way. When they reached the lagoon, Storm was carefully released into the controlled waters. For a moment he froze, unused to the sensation of space after days in a confined tank. Then he surged forward, not fast, but with purpose. He circled the lagoon slowly, exploring. He nudged the coral structures, clicked softly in the water. The team watched from behind the glass walls, holding their breath. Then, finally, he let out a long, rolling whistle. Olivia closed her eyes, heart pounding. He was calling for his family. And now, they just had to hope someone out there was listening. For the first time since his rescue, Storm swam with a sense of intention. His strokes were uneven, his energy limited, but the desire was unmistakable. He circled the perimeter of the lagoon, diving briefly, surfacing with slow breaths. Every few minutes, he released a sequence of low, tentative whistles, reaching, searching. Olivia had heard those kinds of vocalizations before. Not just echolocation clicks or idle chatter. These were signature whistles, personal, identifying calls dolphins used to signal to their pod. Storm was remembering his voice. "Run the spectrogram again," she instructed Jasmine. They stood in the research booth overlooking the rehabilitation lagoon, where every click and whistle echoed through the submerged microphones and danced across the monitors in luminous color-coded lines. "Already on it," Jasmine said, fingers flying over the keys. Storm's latest whistle sequence scrolled across the screen. It was longer than before, more structured. Olivia compared it to the archived calls from the offshore pod. There were overlaps in the pattern, faint, imperfect, but promising. "He's adapting his call," Olivia said, trying to mimic theirs. Thomas joined them, sipping black coffee from a steel travel mug. Imitation could mean recognition. He may remember the pod's vocalizations even if they've drifted apart. "Then they might remember him," Jasmine added hopefully. The team had placed 3 hydrophones just outside the lagoon's outer mesh barrier, capturing sounds from the open water beyond. Every few hours, dolphins would pass near the coast, often without stopping. Sometimes there were distant whistles. Most were unfamiliar. But 2 days after Storm's transfer to the lagoon, something different happened. It was late afternoon. The sun hung low behind scattered clouds, turning the waves a dark bronze. Olivia was alone in the booth when she noticed a spike on the hydrophone display. Not noise, not random. A pattern. She leaned in. A whistle rang through the system, higher pitched, then descending into a flutter of rapid clicks. Then another. Then 3 in quick succession. She played back Storm's last recorded call. It was different, but not unrecognizable. She hit the intercom. "Jasmine, Thomas, get up here, now!" They arrived minutes later, Jasmine breathless. "What is it?" Olivia played the external audio again. This time, the whistles were louder, closer. "That's them," Olivia said quietly. "They're answering." Down in the lagoon, Storm froze mid-turn. His head turned toward the ocean-facing mesh. He hovered there, motionless, fins twitching. Then he answered. His whistle came low and strong, the clearest sound he'd made yet. And from beyond the mesh, a reply. 3 dolphins appeared near the outer barrier. They surfaced together, like synchronized dancers, sleek bodies rising and falling in the sunlit swell. One was larger, possibly an adult female. The other 2 were smaller, agile, playful. Olivia zoomed in on the camera feed. Jasmine gasped. "That one, the female. She's repeating his whistle." "They know him," Thomas murmured. "That's not just curiosity." The team watched in stunned silence as the trio swam slow loops near the mesh, occasionally pausing to vocalize or nudge the net with their rostrums. Inside the lagoon, Storm hovered near them, mirroring their movements, whistling in reply. "They want him back," Olivia said. It should have felt like the end of a long journey, a celebration, but she knew better. "He's still not strong enough to swim with them long distance," Thomas cautioned. "We open the net now, and he might not last a day." "But if we keep him here too long," Jasmine added, "they might leave without him." So they made a plan. They would begin daily controlled releases, supervised swimming exercises outside the lagoon under close boat support. If Storm could demonstrate the stamina and awareness to keep up with the pod for more than 30 minutes at a time, they'd consider a full reintegration. The first session began the next morning. The sea was calm, and the sky painted in soft watercolor tones of pink and peach. The 3 visiting dolphins were back, circling the lagoon like they'd never left. Olivia rowed in the lead boat, eyes locked on the water as the crew released the outer mesh gate. Storm hesitated at first, drifting in the shallows. Then, as the gate opened wide, he surged forward with surprising force, and the 3 wild dolphins met him halfway. They swam together like no time had passed, weaving and circling, chirping and clicking. One of the smaller dolphins pressed its side to Storm's, almost like a greeting hug. For a few glorious moments, the team dared to believe it was going to work. But after 12 minutes, Storm slowed. His strokes became uneven, his breath more labored. Olivia signaled the recovery team. They gently guided him back to the lagoon before exhaustion took him. Still, he'd made it 12 minutes. And for the first time since his arrival, he didn't sink in the water after returning. He floated upright, proud. They repeated the exercise every day, Day 2, 15 minutes. Day 3, 21. By day 6, Storm completed a full half-hour swim with the pod before returning. His stamina was improving, so was his echolocation. He began chasing live fish in the lagoon again, responding to toy cues, even recognizing the sound of Olivia's voice over the underwater speaker system. He was healing, not just physically, but emotionally. But nature rarely grants perfect recovery arcs. On the 9th day of open water exercises, the pod didn't come. Storm waited by the open gate for nearly an hour, circling, scanning, whistling. No response. The ocean was empty. Olivia sat on the dock beside the water, heart tight. "Come on," she murmured. "Come back." But they didn't. Jasmine joined her an hour later. "I've checked the hydrophones. No contact from that pod since yesterday." Thomas crossed his arms. "They might have moved on. They don't understand human timelines. They waited as long as they could." Storm floated near the gate, motionless, waiting. Olivia stood. "Then we find them." Storm remained near the open gate for hours after the pod's absence. The sea beyond was wide and silent, save for the gentle rocking of the tide and the rhythmic beat of boat hulls anchored nearby. His dorsal fin cut the surface occasionally as he turned slow, searching circles, but his energy was low. Olivia watched from the dock, her knees drawn to her chest, a towel draped across her shoulders from the early morning chill. "He doesn't understand," Jasmine said softly behind her. "He doesn't know why they didn't come back." Olivia didn't respond immediately. She could feel the weight of Storm's stillness in the water as though it were her own. They were his lifeline, his reason to fight, and now he thinks they left him again. "He might stop calling," Jasmine added, "or even give up." Thomas joined them with a tablet in hand. "We've got something." Olivia stood instantly. "Talk to me." "We rechecked the sonar logs. Yesterday, 2 hours before their usual arrival time, the hydrophones picked up high-frequency vessel noise, possibly a fast-moving jet ski group or low-flying helicopter. If they were spooked, they might have diverted course." Olivia frowned. "Any sightings further north?" Thomas nodded. "One of the offshore monitoring buoys about 20 miles up the coast picked up a pod with matching whistle markers. Time matches perfectly." "They didn't abandon him," she said, eyes lighting up. "They're just ahead." 20 miles is a long swim for him," Jasmine said. "But not impossible. Not if we go with him." "Exactly." Olivia turned toward the boats. "We prep the support vessel. Tomorrow morning we do something we've never done before. An assisted long-range release." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "You want to trail a juvenile dolphin across 20 miles of open water?" "Yes," Olivia replied, "because I'm not going to watch him give up when his family is still out there." They worked into the night. The team retrofitted the center's largest marine support boat with additional sonar equipment and side cameras. Jasmine prepped hydration gel packs in case Storm faltered. Thomas assembled a backup floating stretcher and emergency hoist system, should something go wrong. Before sunrise, Storm was gently coaxed out of the lagoon. He hesitated. There was no pod to meet him this time, but the open sea called to something in his memory. He gave a low whistle and slid into deeper waters beside the support boat. Olivia stood at the bow, wind lifting strands of her tied-back hair. "Let's find them." The journey was slow but steady. Storm swam just ahead of the boat, occasionally glancing back with what felt like a silent check-in. Olivia watched his movement with a scientist's focus, but a friend's anxiety. She whispered updates into the comms to Jasmine, who monitored his vitals from the control console. Surface intervals consistent, heart rate stable. After 5 miles, Storm released a sequence of signature whistles. Olivia held her breath. A few moments later, distant replies echoed back. "He hears them," Jasmine said. "They're not far," Olivia replied. "Push on." They followed the pod's sound trail like breadcrumbs scattered across the sea. Sometimes the dolphins' replies came clearly. Other times they faded, distant, like ghosts of hope. At mile 12, Storm slowed. He began to sway slightly as he surfaced, his tail strokes weakening. "He's tiring," Thomas warned. "We should get him aboard." But Olivia shook her head. "Not yet. Let me try." She leaned over the side, calling softly into the water. "Storm, just a little more. They're close. You're almost there." Storm turned toward the sound of her voice. Then he dove. They lost sight of him for nearly 40 seconds. Just as Thomas prepared to sound the alarm, Storm breached in a wide arc. the highest leap he'd made since the rescue. His body flashed silver blue in the sunlight. Jasmine gasped. He's rallying. Minutes later, the sonar pinged steadily. 5 dolphins appeared from the southeast. The reunion was not immediate. The pod approached slowly, cautiously. But Storm whistled first, loud and clear. A long, winding call that sounded both familiar and strange, like a memory reshaped. The lead female responded. They circled him, bodies brushing in greeting. One calf let out a burst of clicks that made Storm visibly twitch with recognition. Olivia couldn't hold back her smile. He found them, Jasmine said in awe. Storm swam among them now, slower than they were, but accepted. He surfaced with the group, dove with them, mimicked their turns. But it didn't last long. After only 10 minutes, the pod began to shift course, moving farther out to sea. Storm hesitated. He's too tired, Thomas said. He can't keep up. The dolphins called to him, urging. Storm turned once toward the boat, toward Olivia. Then, with effort, he followed the pod. At first, it seemed he'd make it. But after 300 yards, his movements changed. His breathing grew shallow. He began to drift behind. Olivia grabbed the radio. Get the stretcher ready. We're going in. Thomas and Jasmine scrambled, readying the harness. But just before they moved, the lead female in the pod turned back. She swam to Storm, bumping gently against his side, then nudged him upward. The others circled back as well, forming a loose V shape around him. They slowed. They're adjusting for him, Jasmine said. Storm found a second wind, pushed by his companions. Together, they moved as one. The support boat followed at a distance, watching the silhouettes fade into the open sea. Olivia remained at the bow, her heart pounding. For a long time, they tracked the group by sonar alone. Then, silence. The pod had moved beyond range. Storm was gone. The boat floated quietly on the surface of the sea, crew silent. And Olivia? She stood alone, wind on her face, eyes fixed on the horizon, uncertain if her heart had just broken or healed. The sea returned to stillness after Storm and the pod disappeared from sonar range. For a long while, no one spoke. The support boat rocked gently, its engines idle, while Olivia stood motionless at the bow. Her mind raced with thoughts, triumph, fear, doubt, each emotion crashing into the next like the waves below. Behind her, Jasmine whispered, "Do we follow?" Thomas shook his head. "If we push farther, we risk getting too far from support range. We're a rescue vessel, not a tracking ship." "But we just let him go," she began. "We let him live," Olivia interrupted quietly. "The way he was meant to." Thomas stepped up beside her. "Do you think he'll make it?" Olivia didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed locked on the empty blue horizon where Storm had vanished. "He's not alone now. That gives him a chance. More than we ever could." She stayed on deck all the way back to the center, not retreating to the cabin, not even during the light drizzle that began as they crossed into coastal waters. Only when the familiar silhouette of the Marine Rescue Center came into view did she finally sit, exhaling the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Storm is out there, she thought, and that has to be enough. But the story didn't end there. 3 days passed. Olivia returned to her routine, though it felt hollow. She still walked the tanks, checked the recovery records, and answered calls from the Coastal Rescue Network. But without Storm, everything felt quieter. His lagoon enclosure remained empty, still kept clean. The gate occasionally opened, just in case. Jasmine noticed first. "You're keeping the lagoon operational?" "Temporarily," Olivia replied. "Sometimes dolphins come back. For safety, for help. If Storm remembers it, he might." Thomas wasn't as hopeful. "Pods don't linger. They move quickly, searching for food, staying ahead of predators. If they accepted him, they'll have moved on." "I know," Olivia said, "but I'm not ready to give up yet." She returned to the dock each sunrise, just for a few minutes, just to listen. Sometimes she thought she heard something in the surf, a faint whistle maybe, but nothing confirmed, nothing real. Then on the 4th morning, Jasmine burst into the control room, tablet in hand, breathless. "We have a signal." Olivia turned sharply. "What?" "The tracking tag. Storm's. It pinged a coastal buoy 12 miles south." "He's near shore?" "Briefly. Then the signal dropped again." Olivia was already moving. "Get the boat ready." They reached the buoy site in less than an hour. The sky was overcast, and the water chopped unevenly. Olivia stood at the bow, scanning. "Sonar's clean," Thomas reported. "No pods nearby." Olivia shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. Why would he come this close, then vanish?" Jasmine frowned over the tracking screen. "He might have been feeding, or resting near the shelf. It could be a fluke. Or a distress signal," Olivia muttered. "We need to sweep the area." They spent 6 hours patrolling a 20-mile stretch of coast. Dolphins were spotted. One pod far offshore, another deeper south, but no sign of storm. It felt like a cruel joke. Back at the center, Olivia sat in the darkened observation room. The sea loomed in the distance beyond the glass. The empty lagoon lay just below, eerily still. A soft knock broke the silence. Jasmine stepped in. "I know you feel like we lost him," she said gently. "But we didn't. You gave him a second chance. Most stranded dolphins don't get that." "It doesn't feel like enough," Olivia whispered. "Maybe it's not supposed to," Jasmine said. "Maybe it's about letting go." Olivia gave a tired smile. "Funny thing is, I thought I had. But I keep thinking I'll see him again, just once. Maybe it's selfish. Or maybe it's something else." The next day brought news that neither expected. A beach patrol from Key Biscayne reported a sighting. A juvenile dolphin swimming unusually close to shore, flanked by 2 larger companions. All 3 had similar markings to those in the photo records Olivia had archived. The patrol managed to snap a few blurry photos. It was Storm. He looked leaner, more muscular. The scars on his flank were still visible, but faded. He was swimming in sync with the pod, diving, rising, playing. He was alive, thriving. Olivia stared at the grainy images on the screen. She enlarged one. Storm surfacing near the patrol boat, droplets cascading off his back like silver stars. He was looking directly at the camera. It was the confirmation she needed. No tag signal. No sonar. Just a moment. Fleeting but real. That night, the team gathered quietly in the operations room. No fanfare, no speeches. Just a photo taped to the wall. Storm. In the wild. Free. Olivia pinned a small note beneath it. "You were never lost. You were just finding your way home." They left the lagoon gate open one last night, just in case, but it was never used. Storm had chosen his path. One that led not back, but forward, with the sea stretched endlessly ahead. And in the quiet of the water, beneath the wind and stars, the rescue team rested. Because for the first time in weeks, they knew. He was exactly where he was meant to be. Life at the Florida Coastal Rescue Center gradually resumed its rhythm. The calls about stranded sea turtles and injured seabirds returned. A baby manatee was brought in with propeller injuries, and Olivia spent 2 days overseeing its care. But no matter how full her schedule grew, one image always lingered. The grainy photo of Storm, free among his own. That photo now occupied a quiet corner of the main hallway, framed under soft light. Every volunteer passed it at least once a day, some whispering "good job" or "stay strong," as if he could still hear them across the waves. Jasmine sometimes lingered in front of it a moment too long. Olivia never admitted it, but she did too. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The tracking tag never pinged again. The pod sightings moved further south, past the Keys, toward the Caribbean shelf. "He's with them," Olivia said one evening, answering no one in particular. Jasmine looked up from the marine logs. "You still believe that?" "I know it." Still, belief doesn't fill the silence left behind. The center's lagoon remained unused. Its waters were kept clean, but the gate was rarely opened anymore. There were no more test swims, no more whistles from the speakers, just the sound of wind and waves, and the occasional gull overhead. Then, late one Sunday night, everything changed. The center's emergency line rang. Olivia, alone in the ops room, answered. "Marine Rescue, this is Hart." A voice crackled through. "Coast Guard." A rescue vessel had responded to a report near Virginia Key. A jet ski had collided with something large beneath the surface, what they initially believed to be debris. Upon inspection, it turned out to be a dolphin, alive, but barely. "Any identification?" Olivia asked, heart pounding. "Unknown, but we're forwarding photos." They came through seconds later, and her heart nearly stopped. It was Storm. The long white scar along his left dorsal fin, unmistakable. But he looked thinner than the last photo. There was bruising along his flank, a long gash near his pectoral fin, likely from the propeller. "Where is he now?" she asked, already grabbing her coat. Being transported to your facility now, the responder replied. ETA under 30 minutes. Olivia ran. The lagoon was already being filled and oxygenated by the time she arrived. Jasmine, eyes wide and heart racing, met her at the gate. Is it really him? Yes, Olivia said. Get Thomas on call. And alert the night vet. The rescue truck pulled in moments later. Storm lay quietly inside the tank, his eyes open but glazed, tail motionless. Olivia reached into the water and touched his side gently. Storm, you came back. He didn't respond. Let's get him inside, Thomas instructed, voice urgent but steady. Together, they moved him into the triage bay. Monitors were hooked up, hydration drips prepped. Storm didn't resist, a worrying sign. Olivia knew he was beyond exhausted. It wasn't just injury, it was shock, possibly infection, possibly something worse. We need a full blood panel, Thomas said. Jasmine, get vitals. Olivia, help stabilize his position. Hours passed in a blur. By dawn, they had cleaned and stitched the wound on his side, stabilized his breathing, and eased him into a fresh tank with gentle current flow. Olivia refused to leave the room, even as the rest of the team rotated for rest. Storm floated quietly, listing slightly to one side. Thomas returned later with preliminary results. The injuries are bad but treatable. What worries me is his blood chemistry. He's severely malnourished, and his cortisol levels are through the roof. Olivia frowned. He's been under extreme stress for days, maybe weeks. And he's dehydrated, Jasmine added. Possibly separated from the pod again. Olivia's jaw clenched. Or left. They all stared at the dolphin, silent. That night, Storm cried out in his sleep. It was a series of whistles, urgent and panicked, a sound Olivia hadn't heard before. She sprang from the cot she'd set up nearby, rushing to the tank. His body twitched, his fluke flapping against the water, then stillness. He's dreaming, Jasmine said softly, coming up behind her. No, Olivia replied. He's remembering. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. Storm improved slowly. The wound was healing, and his breathing stabilized. But something was missing. He didn't whistle. He didn't respond to calls. He didn't chase fish. He barely moved at all unless prompted. He's retreating, Thomas said. We've seen it before. When they lose their pod, they sometimes shut down. But he had them, Jasmine whispered. He was thriving. And then something happened, Olivia finished. A pod separation, an injury during migration, a territorial dispute. They could guess 100 scenarios, but they would never know what had truly caused him to turn back, alone and battered. Olivia spent hours beside him, talking, reading, playing dolphin whistles through the speakers. She even played recordings of his old calls, the ones from his first recovery. On the fourth day, something changed. As the recording played through the overhead speakers, Olivia noticed a ripple in the water. Storm shifted, turned, and then, barely audible, he answered. One whistle, weak, raspy, but it was his. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. You're still in there, aren't you? That night, she replayed the clip of Storm reuniting with the pod, the video from the day they'd escorted him out to sea. He watched from the tank, unmoving. Then, slowly, he approached the edge closest to the screen. He pressed his rostrum gently to the glass. Jasmine, watching from the door, whispered, He misses them. He loved them, Olivia replied, and maybe he always will. The team didn't talk about releasing him again. Not yet. He wasn't ready. Not physically, not emotionally. But he was trying, and that was everything. Storm's second stay at the rescue center was quieter. Not because the center itself lacked urgency. There were always emergencies, calls about injured pelicans, distressed sea turtles, and entangled manatees. But because Storm had entered a different kind of fight, a fight of the soul. His body was healing. The stitched wound along his flank was closing, the bruising lightening to faded gray patches, and his breathing had normalized. But his mind, that was another matter. He didn't call out. He didn't approach toys, didn't engage with enrichment tools, and barely responded to the feeding team unless Olivia was present. It wasn't complete withdrawal, not like the early days after his original stranding, but it was hollow, cautious, like he was here, and not here at all. Olivia understood more than she wanted to admit. Some days she stood at the edge of the tank with a waterproof tablet, scrolling through data. Other days she read aloud, sometimes articles, sometimes field notes, once even a novel she kept meaning to finish. Storm would float near the sound, not visibly reacting, but not swimming away either. "Do you think he regrets coming back?" Jasmine asked one afternoon, handing Olivia a fresh tray of thawed herring. Olivia shook her head. "I think he didn't have a choice." "You mean they left him again?" "I mean, something happened, and he knew where to go. He remembered the one place he was cared for. That means something." Jasmine looked at the dolphin in silence, then said, "You know, you're the only person he consistently reacts to." Olivia nodded. "He remembers me." "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can help him find his way again." She wasn't sure. Dolphins, like people, could fracture under too much loss. But then, 10 days after Storm's return, something extraordinary happened. It was early morning, still quiet. Olivia arrived before sunrise, as usual. The center was cool and dim, the hallway lights humming faintly. She made her way to the observation room where Storm floated in his familiar pattern, slow ovals around the perimeter. But today something had changed. He wasn't alone. A wild dolphin, small, sleek, and untagged, circled just outside the open lagoon barrier. Olivia froze. The camera feeds confirmed it. A juvenile, likely female, young but mature enough to navigate alone. She was whistling. Not random noise, a repeated call. Storm was pressed to the side of the tank nearest the sea, completely still. Then, slowly, he surfaced and answered. Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for her radio. "Jasmine, Thomas, get down here. Now!" Within minutes, the team had assembled, watching from the deck as the two dolphins called and responded across the barrier. "It's like a conversation," Jasmine whispered. "They know each other?" Thomas asked. "Not necessarily," Olivia replied. "But she may have heard his calls. Dolphins share whistles, mimic them. She might have followed him, or just found him by chance." The young dolphin nudged the barrier gently, vocalizing again. "She wants to come in," Jasmine said. "We can't allow that," Thomas said quickly. "We don't know her health status. No interspecies contact until quarantine is cleared." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "Right, but we can observe. Maybe she'll come back." The female dolphin lingered for 2 more hours before vanishing into deeper waters. Storm didn't swim for the rest of the day. He stayed near the barrier, waiting. That night he didn't sleep, and just before dawn, she returned. This time, there were 2 of them. Another dolphin, slightly older, male, accompanied her. They stayed close to the barrier, surfacing often, vocalizing. Storm became animated, swimming, rolling, echoing their whistles, even breaching once in a low arc that splashed water across the lagoon deck. "I've never seen him like this," Jasmine whispered, wide-eyed. Olivia recorded the whole thing. "He's responding, engaging, seeking connection." "Do we know the new dolphin?" Thomas asked. "No tags, no markers. Probably not part of Storm's original pod. Could be transient. Could be nearby residents." "Should we consider a test swim?" Jasmine asked. Olivia stared out at the sea. Storm had spent over a week in recovery. He was eating again, swimming more vigorously. But was he ready? "I want 3 days of interaction first," she said. "If they return each morning, we prepare for open water reintroduction." Each day the dolphins came, like a ritual. Just before sunrise, they appeared near the barrier, whistling, playing. Storm responded with more enthusiasm than anyone had expected, mimicking, chasing fish in the tank, even vocalizing before they arrived, like he anticipated them. His echolocation returned in full strength. He chased moving targets underwater, responded to echo pulses played through the speaker system, and re-engaged with every enrichment activity. He was coming back. The decision came quickly. On the 4th morning, the barrier gate was opened. Storm hesitated only a second before sliding through the gap into open water. Olivia held her breath. The other 2 dolphins circled him. They rubbed flanks, chirped, nudged him outward. Together they swam a wide arc before vanishing into deeper blue. "They're headed south," Thomas said. "Toward the Keys." Jasmine added, "He's strong enough this time. I believe that." Olivia nodded slowly. "So do I." They watched the sea long after the dolphins had gone. And for the first time since his return, Olivia didn't feel the weight of fear or guilt, just something lighter, warmer. Hope. The ocean was quiet again. The kind of quiet that made Olivia's heart think, really think, about what it meant to let go, and what it meant to hold on. Storm was gone, but not in the way he had been before. This time, there was no fear in his leaving. No injury, no desperation. Just a gate opened, a body healed, a mind ready. And then motion. Purposeful motion. He had chosen the ocean again. And for a while, that was enough. The following week passed without any sign of him. No sonar pings, no surface sightings. The 2 dolphins that had visited him didn't return. The mornings at the center were busy, the afternoons warm and buzzing with summer storms rolling in from the Gulf. But still, the lagoon stayed quiet. Jasmine noticed Olivia's habit of pausing at the open gate before she started her rounds each morning. "You still think he might come back?" Olivia didn't look away from the water. "Not in the way we expect?" Jasmine smiled softly. "You mean you hope he won't?" Olivia's expression didn't change, but her answer was clear. Because coming back would mean something had gone wrong. Storm was meant to be out there now, in the wild, among his kind, in the place they'd all worked so hard to return him to. And so Olivia watched the water, not because she expected him to return, but because she needed to remind herself of what she had helped him reach. The ocean, freedom. But fate has a complicated sense of timing. On a late afternoon just before a storm, the Coast Guard called again. Olivia almost didn't answer. She was elbow deep in bandaging a green sea turtle's flipper. Jasmine picked up instead. Her face changed as she listened. "What is it?" Olivia asked, standing. Jasmine met her eyes. "They found something. 2 dolphins, 1 deceased, 1 alive, tangled in netting, injured, young." Olivia felt her heart stumble. "Where?" "Off Elliott Key, 30 minutes south. They're bringing the survivor here." She didn't wait to ask more. By the time the rescue boat arrived, the sky had turned silver gray, thunder rumbling softly in the distance. Olivia stood with Thomas and Jasmine at the intake dock as the vessel pulled in. The dolphin in the transport sling was smaller than Storm, younger, deep abrasions around the tail and dorsal fin from monofilament netting. It moved weakly, sides rising and falling with ragged breath. But something in its face, the wide-set eyes, the slope of its melon, the slight dip in the fluke, caught Olivia off guard. "This isn't Storm," Thomas said, reading her thoughts. "No, but—" Olivia stepped closer. Inside the holding tank, the dolphin whimpered. It was a soft, lost sound, not one of pain, but of confusion. "Male," Jasmine reported. "Estimated under a year old." "Too young to be alone," Thomas added. "No tag, no injuries indicating vessel collision." "Then where's his mother?" Olivia asked. Jasmine glanced at the Coast Guard officers. They said the other dolphin they found, the one that didn't survive, was female. Adult. Silence fell over the deck. They didn't need to say it aloud. They all knew the odds. "Do we have photos of the deceased?" Olivia asked. Jasmine nodded. "I didn't want to show you until you were ready." Olivia took the tablet. The images were hard to look at. The dolphin, a mature female, had similar coloration to the one Storm had once swum with. A scar pattern along the pectoral fin. Faint, but... She zoomed in. There it was. A white crescent just behind the eye. The same marking as the female from the footage when Storm first reunited with the pod. "Could this calf be Storm's?" Jasmine asked gently. Olivia stared at the screen. Her voice was tight when she finally answered. "I don't know, but I think we need to find out." They named the calf Ripple. He was small, timid, and deeply frightened by everything. Unlike Storm, who had arrived injured but conscious of his surroundings, Ripple was in shock. He barely moved in the water, and when he did, it was frantic, as if searching for something he didn't know he'd lost. The team took shifts monitoring him. Olivia worked through the night, tracking Ripple's vitals, mapping his breathing patterns, even playing recordings of Storm's old whistles. On the 3rd night, something happened. Ripple responded. He swam toward the speaker when Storm's calls echoed through the water. His clicks changed. His posture shifted. He hovered near the sound. Jasmine observed, notebook in hand. "You think he recognizes him?" "Or recognizes a voice like his," Olivia replied. Over the next days, Ripple began to trust them. He allowed closer feeding, accepted soft toys, played gently with a floating buoy that Olivia placed in the tank. His energy returned slowly, and with it, new patterns. He began mimicking the recordings. Whistles, clicks, pitches not unlike storms. Thomas ran the audio through a spectrogram comparison. Storm and ripple share over 60% whistle structure. That's unusually high. You're saying they're related? Jasmine asked. I'm saying it's likely. Mother and calf signatures diverge, but male dolphins often develop whistles close to family members. Olivia didn't say anything. She was too busy watching the way Ripple moved now. More confident, more curious. The way he followed her around the tank when she walked the perimeter. The way his head tilted when she called his name. He reminded her of Storm, but not because he was Storm's copy, because he was part of Storm's legacy. That night, Olivia stood at the edge of the tank alone, the water dark under soft moonlight. She called softly. You sent him back, didn't you? The waves answered only in ripples. Ripple healed quickly. Faster than anyone expected, in fact. In just under 2 weeks, his wounds had closed, his energy returned, and his playfulness bloomed like sunlight on water. He chased fish with the persistence of a storm, chirped at his trainers, and even learned to follow the feeding whistle with impressive precision. There was no doubt now. Ripple was not just surviving, he was thriving. But it wasn't just his physical recovery that struck Olivia. It was the way he looked at her. The way he followed her around the edge of the tank as she moved. The way his head always surfaced near her side of the pool when she spoke. The way his eye locked with hers when she played back Storm's old recordings. Not in confusion, not in fear, but in recognition. There was no denying the connection anymore. This calf knew Storm. And whether Storm had been his podmate, his older sibling, or even something more, Olivia believed one thing above all. Ripple had been sent back for a reason. I'm recommending a long-term care protocol, Thomas said one morning, holding up a tablet with Ripple's full medical history. Jasmine furrowed her brow. You don't think he's releasable? Not yet, Thomas replied. He's strong, yes, but he's too young. Still needs to nurse, or at least have a bonded companion. If he goes back alone now, odds are low he'll survive. Olivia nodded quietly. We keep him here, for now. But he's wild, Jasmine said. He'll need more than just medical care. He needs contact, interaction. I'll be that contact, Olivia said without hesitation. Thomas raised an eyebrow. You. I already am. So Olivia changed her schedule, rebuilt her days around Ripple's rhythms. She entered the tank twice a day, once in the early morning, once in the late afternoon, wearing a lightweight wetsuit, slowly building trust. At first, Ripple was cautious. He circled from a distance, watching with dark, curious eyes. But he never fled. And by the end of the first week, he began swimming closer. On the 10th day, he bumped her palm with his rostrum. On the 12th, he followed her underwater, mimicking her movements. And by the 15th, he floated beside her, still and quiet, resting, trusting. He's bonded to you, Jasmine said, watching from above. He's looking for family, Olivia replied. And I'm the only one left. But the ocean never stays still for long. 2 weeks into Ripple's recovery, the hydrophones detected a familiar signal, a pod moving north along the coast. The patterns were strikingly similar to those the center had logged months before. Olivia reviewed the audio personally. She knew those whistles. They're back, she whispered. Storm's pod? Thomas asked. Olivia nodded, or what's left of it. The recordings had changed. Fewer whistles, more call and response, slower. Smaller group, Thomas observed. Only 2, maybe 3 dolphins. They're circling near Elliott Key, Jasmine added. Could be feeding, could be resting. Olivia didn't hesitate. We need to try. Thomas frowned. Ripple's not ready. He's too young. We're not releasing him, Olivia clarified. But if they come close, if they recognize his call, they might return. What if Storm is with them? Jasmine asked softly. The question hung in the air like fog. They transported Ripple to the outer lagoon early the next morning. He was calm, cooperative. Olivia stayed in the tank with him during the transfer, holding his side as the boat glided across the channel. When they lowered him into the outer enclosure, he let out a soft whistle, one of Storm's. The response came almost instantly. A faint reply, from the open water, then another, and then a dorsal fin. 2 dolphins appeared beyond the outer gate. The younger one was lean and light-colored, and the older, broader, more scarred. Olivia felt her heart stop. The scar was there, along the dorsal fin, a crescent mark behind the eye. Storm. He'd returned. Ripple surged toward the barrier, squeaking, spinning, vocalizing so rapidly it startled the team. Storm circled once, then let out a long, descending whistle, low and familiar. Ripple answered. They swam parallel on either side of the mesh, pressed together as closely as the gate allowed, whistling, clicking, echoing each other like lost halves of the same song. "I've never seen anything like this," Thomas whispered. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "He found him." "They remember," Jasmine said, stunned. "Not just remember," Olivia said. "They chose to come back." The gate stayed closed for now. It was too soon to risk reintroduction, too dangerous to let Ripple into open water at his age. But Storm and the second dolphin, likely another juvenile, perhaps a peer from the pod, remained near the lagoon for 3 days. They circled, called, rested nearby, and Ripple stayed close to the gate every waking hour, his tail swishing, his clicks soft and full of longing. On the 4th morning they were gone. Ripple cried out, and Olivia knew. That goodbye was the hardest of all. Storm didn't return after that. No more sonar, no more pings. But something inside Ripple had changed. He grew stronger, his whistles became more complex, his swimming more confident. He started exploring the tank alone, chasing fish with an almost reckless energy. He was healing in a new way now, not just physically or emotionally, but instinctively. He had been seen. He had been claimed. Even if the sea had taken Storm away again, Ripple had what so many rescued dolphins never received: closure. A memory not of loss, but of belonging. And Olivia, though her heart ached, knew she would carry that moment for the rest of her life. Storm's eye, that last look, the quiet understanding between them. He knew. He remembered. And he forgave her for letting him go. The season shifted slowly on the Florida coast. The air grew heavier with the humidity of approaching summer, and the seagrasses swayed longer beneath the current. Tourists returned to the beaches, the storms returned to the horizon, and the rescue center settled once again into its quiet rhythm of saving what the world overlooked. Ripple remained in his enclosure, but he wasn't the same calf they had pulled, bleeding and terrified, from the rescue sling 6 weeks earlier. He had grown. His movements were more deliberate now, less erratic. His muscles stronger, his breath deeper. He played more, but also thought more, often pausing to scan the sea with still eyes, as if searching for something on the other side of the world. Olivia knew that look. She had seen it in Storm. It was the look of a dolphin whose body was healed, but whose spirit had learned to live between two worlds, the memory of trauma and the promise of freedom. They conducted Ripple's final evaluation in the early morning light. Thomas adjusted the medical scanner as Ripple swam through the narrow channel between the lagoon walls. Heart rate normal, stroke pattern symmetrical, no signs of nerve damage. Echolocation response is excellent, Jasmine added, noting the pitch of Ripple's rapid-fire clicks. He's navigating the target maze faster than any of our past juveniles. Olivia stood quietly near the gate, arms folded, eyes on the horizon. Behavioral signs? Still strongly social, Jasmine answered. Less distressed when alone. Sleeps consistently now, and he started to vocalize his own whistle. Olivia turned. His own? Jasmine nodded and played a short clip. The whistle was a swirl of ascending and descending tones, melodic, not unlike Storm's, but distinct, a voice uniquely his. He's asserting independence, Olivia said softly. More than that, Thomas replied. He's announcing himself. The team gathered that evening for a rare moment of calm. They stood on the observation deck above the lagoon, drinks in hand, watching the last rays of sunlight stretch across the water. Ripple breached once, joyfully, then vanished beneath the surface. Still amazes me, Thomas said, swirling his glass, that we got 2 chances with this story. It was never supposed to be a story, Olivia said. Just a rescue. Just one more dolphin. But it became something else, Jasmine added. A full circle. They fell into silence, watching Ripple resurface and spin in the moonlit water. What happens now? Thomas asked eventually. Olivia didn't answer right away. She watched Ripple swim toward the outer gate, not out of panic or longing, but purpose. He knew something was coming. He's ready, she finally said. He's not just surviving anymore. He's calling. They waited 4 more days. Then, just before dawn on the 5th, the pod returned. It wasn't Storm. Not this time. It was the young female from weeks earlier. Alone. Curious. Hovering just outside the mesh with a whistle that was gentle and rhythmic. A sound that said, "I'm not a threat. I remember." Ripple responded instantly. He let out his signature whistle, loud and clear. The female answered. They circled on opposite sides of the barrier like mirrored shadows. "She remembers him," Jasmine whispered. "Maybe she came back for him," Thomas added. Olivia felt something settle in her chest. Maybe they both came back for each other. The release was planned carefully. The female stayed nearby all day, and then the next. She didn't approach other dolphins, didn't swim far. She waited, and Ripple waited too, but not with confusion or sorrow, with readiness. So, on the morning of the release, the team gathered on the dock. Olivia placed a hand in the water. Ripple came instantly, bumping her fingers with his nose. She smiled. "Go, little one. The sea is yours now." The gate opened. Ripple didn't bolt. He didn't hesitate either. He swam, straight and strong toward the open sea. The female met him halfway. They circled once, then again, before heading into deeper water. Not fast, but together, side by side, breathing in rhythm, disappearing into blue. No tags, no transmitters, no artificial tracking, just the memory of every whistle, every leap, every flick of a tail, and the sound of silence in their wake, a silence not of absence, but of fulfillment. Olivia didn't go back inside for a long time. She stood at the end of the dock, eyes closed, listening to the sea. Not for calls, not for splashes, just listening. Eventually, Jasmine joined her. "Do you think we'll ever see him again?" Olivia didn't open her eyes. "I hope not." Jasmine blinked. "Really?" "If we do, it means he needs us again," Olivia said softly. "But he shouldn't need us anymore." She opened her eyes then, not to watch, but to feel the warmth of the sun across her face. He was never ours to keep. Neither was Storm. That night, she returned to the hallway and added a second photo beside Storm's. This one of Ripple. Tail mid-flick, eye just above the waterline, captured in the moment before he vanished into his future. She took a pen and wrote beneath it. He swam toward the horizon, and the ocean welcomed him back, not as a victim, but as one of its own. Somewhere far beyond the Florida coast, a dolphin leapt through warm waves, strong and fast, a second at his side, not lost, not forgotten, just free.